This is the third video in this series, and we focus on online learning and engagement. This is actually quite an important slide, so I'll take it a little bit slowly here. So the concepts of online and student-to-student engagement is directed by how we understand the notion of the beast itself. So learning online, we know, is different to classroom. It redistributes the instructional presence of the teacher. Online, the teacher is one of many, and communication is many to many. And I tried to symbolize that with this diagram here. So the teacher is one part of a many to many connected relationship. Whereas in the classroom, the teacher dominates and it's more of a one to many relationship. However, this relationship, the one to many and the many to many, can actually be illustrated in the way that we use technology. So, for example, if we use Zoom to replicate a classroom, the one to many is that teacher dominant space where you are the instructor to many students in a Zoom synchronous chat. However, if you focus on the chat channel where there's a many-to-many engagement, you're focusing on engineering that engagement. So the way you think about the use of technology actually matters in how you think about and design engagement practices. We'll come back to this idea. Now, I just want to go through a couple of the online theories, but I'll be doing that in this video and the next two videos. Holberg suggests that the foremost condition needed for successful distance education, which is our online space because we're at a distance, is empathy, where empathy includes the student emotionally. Holberg also considers that teachers need to develop online relationships with students, which, along with empathy, creates a feeling of belonging in the community, which in turn supports motivation. Shifting online doesn't necessarily mean turning into a robot or a disembodied voice. It's that natural conversational talk like I am here, my hands are waving. And it also involves making mistakes. So you'll still share with your students those emotional and social activities in that online space. So content is important, but it's wrapped around that humanized social environment. We do this unconsciously when we're face to face, but online we actually have to think strategically about our presence in this space, that human teacher role and how you replicate that humanized empathy engagement. So building rapport with students is critical when you're online. So in the classroom, we might greet the students at the door, we ask about their weekend, we talk about the sports, we have that anytime sort of social, physical presence there. But it's just as important to do this online, and it might require us to make some very conscious choices about how we're engaging, how we're designing the learning to focus on really building student-to-student engagement. So it's not like a teacher-dominant engagement, it's a student-student. So I can't emphasize more how important relationships are and relationship matters in this space, especially the peer-to-peer engagement. One of the most discussed and presented theories in our literature is called transactional distance. So Moore in the early 90s, described the distance between the teacher and the learner as transactional distance, which was pedagogical rather than geographic, the physical distance. So the distance, he described it as relating to dialogue, structure, and learner autonomy. And we can think about this transactional distance, the pedagogical distance, in a number of different ways. And I put that down the bottom there. The learner to teacher, the learner to learner, learner to the content, and learner to the actual interface, the Zoom, the chat channel, the Padlet, whatever tool that you're using. So there's a number of different ways to think about that distance, that pedagogical distance. But it's about the learner to the teacher, but also learner to learner, and learner to content and the interface. Now, the pedagogical distance is determined, as I said, by those three topics to the side: dialogue, structure, and learning autonomy. Dialogue refers to those valued interactions where you're doing the learner to the teacher and the learner to the learner through a dialogic process. You're talking about the content, but you're in an interface. Structure is where an educational program is responsive to the learner needs. So, for example, some educators have put up a lot of the information first, so the students have freedom to choose which content that they're interfacing with, that they're engaging with, and they're doing that with choice and flexibility in their own time. So all the content is provided to the student so that they have those flexibilities to actually engage with it. Learner autonomy is designing things to the extent which the learner determines their goals and the learning experiences. So students may feel more or less transactional distance in their online course, depending on how those three play out: the structure, the dialogue, and how much autonomy that they have. When effective course design is applied, dialogue can easily be incorporated into a structured course when communication technologies are available for students to interact with. So, for example, the use of a discussion forum enables students to communicate, collaborate, create, and it gives them structure and it exercises their own autonomy. So those asynchronous tools often provide the platform for synchronous engagement. So online asynchronous is very, very important for the design of the activities that the students are engaging in. Now, more recently in their study, Bollinger and Halupa in 2018, they found that if students increase the distance in if student engagement increases, I got that wrong. So if student engagement increases, transactional distance decreases. Now, I like to understand transactional distance as the distance of understanding and perceptions. So then it sort of pushes away that idea of the geographical distance. So when we think about this, we actually think about misunderstandings. So distance or geographic distance and that feeling of not being present can actually create misunderstanding. If there is an increase in student engagement in dialogue, their learner autonomy with a structure, there is a decrease in misunderstanding, which what we are calling transactional distance. So the key point here is if you increase student engagement, you decrease misunderstanding. And in other words, you decrease the confusion for students, which also helps with students' motivation and regulation, because feeling like you don't understand what you have to do creates that disengagement online much more easily. So to do this, student engagement needs to look different. It's not just simply putting a whole lot of content up. We need to think about it in different ways. We need to think about how they're engaging with the content, how they're engaging with the tool, how they're engaging with each other, and how they're engaging with the teacher. There's some key ideas that are emerging around online learning. And I've put these out there as choice, collaboration, and self-regulation. Anderson claims that most students enjoy the freedom to choose the time and pace of study that online learning affords. Participating in synchronous activities restricts this independence, whereas Yates and Thiesel concur that not all students want to take part in synchronous activities, but their existence provides security. So there's that tension there that they like having the opportunity for a check-in, but it's on their terms of a check-in. It's not necessarily a 9 to 10 lesson that's synchronous, because they could get that lesson or that content in a different way. So it's thinking about how we can design the content with the interface for student engagement. Yates' recent study of secondary students in New Zealand found that synchronous collaboration was emotionally supportive because students could see their friends and their teachers and share concerns for general well-being. Whereas other students said that collaboration was better when it wasn't limited by the teacher. Taking initiatives to use mediums of communication to make sure they could collaborate on their own actually had an impact. So they were more in control, and that's that idea there in blue around choice. There is an increased opportunity for choice by students, and we actually have to leverage that when we're designing online. So it depends on the task, it depends on the learning intention, and it depends on how you consider collaboration online. Lastly, and I just want to talk a little bit here about self-regulation, and I will talk further about self-regulation in later videos. But self-regulation is one of those key 21st century capabilities that we really have to strategically develop as part of the way we support students to engage online. So self-regulation, we understand that online as being able to manage time, manage the focus on activity, manage the effort to regulate through a problem if a problem does arrive, or a misunderstanding, and that's going back to transactional distance. Being able to employ metacognitive strategies and regulate their engagement is really the key parts of learning at a distance or learning online as part of, again, even if we're doing it in blended modes. So what we've seen over the past 2 years is the fact that the focus is on how to support teachers to collaborate, how to support students to collaborate, how to support students to make choices, and reason why these choices are important so that they relate to the learning intention, and you're very aware, and students are made very aware of how to and why they are doing such activity.